Think outside the box, if you will. I mean, go there, go off campus. Let's think this through. And sure enough, that's where the Mustang was born. When it finally hit, it took the country by storm.
Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. You know, this is the Motor City, and this is the show where we put cars into the context of your everyday life. We love to celebrate a rich automotive heritage here in Grosse Pointe, but we will make no apologies for our decidedly Detroit perspective. And today we're going to give you some perspective on something that'll save you lots of money. And we're going to be talking tires and how you can read what your tires are telling you. It's a secret. It comes from knowledge and context, and for that we've turned to none other than Joe Babiasz. Joe, welcome again to Cars in Context.
Hi, John. How are you? Good to see you.
Thanks for coming out. I really appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you trying to save our viewers some money when it comes to knowing what your tires are saying.
Happy to do it.
Because sometimes, you know, Joe, we're busy. Everybody, you know, is in a hurry. You get our car service, and we don't know what's going on. But if we just learned a few things on today's show, we could save ourselves real cash.
You save yourself a lot of money and be a lot safer.
Yeah, the headaches part, that helps too. But before we do that, you know what we have to find out?
What's that?
What's happening in the news.
Let's take a look.
All right. I'll take this first headline. And I don't know if you guys know this, when you drive down the freeway and you look over at the old Rouge plant, it says this word Severstal. Well, that is the name of the Russian the Russian steel company that bought the old Rouge mill. Well, guess what, folks? No more. They're dumping all their, not only the Rouge steel plant, but all their plants in the United States. The old Rouge Complex steel mill is now for sale. There's a tendered bid on it already to be purchased. And that's because the deteriorating relation between the United States and Russia is worse than ever. So their answer is bail out of the U.S. industries. So what's happened is, the Russian government and the U.S. federal government are odds over their military incursions, if you will. This plant is almost 100 years old. I mean, the Rouge factory, built by Ford. And years ago, they unloaded it, they sold it, and Severstal bought the thing. They paid about $250 million to own this factory on the Ford property. And they still make sheet steel for not only Ford, but a lot of automakers locally. And then guess what? They had to put in $1.5 billion because they had to make it meet all of our pollution standards. So they had to reinvest it. First of all, Joe, it's an old facility. And second of all, we have very stringent air quality standards and safety standards. So after that $1.5 billion investment, I don't think they've recouped their investment now, because right now it's up for sale for $700 million. Looks like AK is going to buy it, and it's gone. So this is proof,
that
folks,
hurts.
That, steel making, you wonder what happened to the steel industry in America. The environmentalists, because it's such a pollution-intensive industry, it's cheaper to offshore our pollution to another country than to deal with it here and do it the right way. Pretty scary.
I hope the sale goes through. At least it'll keep some people employed.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
That's
Speaking
a
of
good thing.
keeping us employed, I hope you have something good.
I do, actually. I do have some good news. There's been a lot of good news for the big three, but this one has to do with General Motors insourcing some IT services. General Motors is going on a trend to insource more IT jobs, and they recently announced the launch of a new $130 million facility in Warren, and about a $250 million facility in Milford.
Wow.
And the new data systems are being developed to help support the company improve vehicle quality. Now, if you remember, back in the 80s, GM bought EDS and insourced all their IT. Then they outsourced all their IT.
Yeah,
and now they're realizing, maybe that wasn't such a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's bring it back
And
again.
we have the talent. I mean, all you guys went to school for computer science,
But, when you look at this, there's about $400 million invested. That's a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of new IT jobs. They're all good paying jobs.
That's
so
really good news.
Great news for GM.
Yeah, and no offense to outsourcing this stuff to Italy, India and overseas, but it's great to have kids that go to computer science class in our own universities get a job right here in their own neighborhood.
Yep,
that's
agreed.
Advantage
this
of
awesome
buying
news.
a GM product.
Awesome news.
Well, I'm still stuck on this Russian thing, Joe. I want to talk about something that's tanked for the Russians, and I'm not talking about
Thanks a lot.
not talking about their military. The car sales in Russia have tanked. And why is that? Well, because of all the sanctions that all the Western nations are putting on Russia because of their military actions, they're starting to really feel the effects there at home. So car sales are down about 20% this summer. And now 20% may not seem like a lot, but when you have an industry that large, that's a punch in the nose.
That's a lot.
So what has Russia done? What's their response? The response is every state and local government, they've put the word out. You can no longer buy any foreign vehicle. You can only buy Russian-built vehicles, including cars and trucks, buses, train stuff, commercial vehicles, emergency vehicles, public transportation like buses, even farm equipment has to be all made in Russia to try to stem the tide of their industry going south and people sitting around with no cars to build.
Wow.
Pretty scary.
Yeah, it is.
You know, we are a global society, and so if you don't act within the boundaries, you can hurt yourself.
Yep.
Very careful. So give me some good news.
More good news. This is from Hyundai. Hyundai has growing pains. Korean maker continues to bemoan the fact they don't have enough factory capacity to meet the customer demands in the United States, despite the fact the company set a sales record of about 750,000 units last year.
In the United States?
In the United States.
750,000?
Hyundai's blaming their capacity constraints for slowing its continued growth in North America. Now, I would prefer having a GM plant somewhere in Detroit, but we have a lot of property in Michigan, and if Hyundai needs a plant, maybe they need to take a look at Michigan. We can give them a good deal on a couple of thousand acres. Maybe
you know, that's the thing with me, Joe. A lot of people say, well, you know, my car was a foreign car, but it was built here in America. The problem is this profit, this 750 million, well, 750,000 vehicles, all the profit went overseas to Hyundai. So, you know, yeah, it was built here. So these jobs that they have, even in America, are just replacing jobs that were not even half the jobs that were lost by domestic makers. So Hyundai, I'd like to feel sorry for you, but we can fix that just by buying a domestic car.
That's true.
We have capacity. That's right.
Nice.
That's right. Now listen, speaking of cars, you think you have a car that may need to replace, maybe it's 10, 11 years old, and you say, man, the thing is looking ratty. It could be worse. Brand new cars in Brazil, brand new cars, they're only like entry-level cars, $3,000 to $4,000. I mean, you can get
amazing.
You know why? Because they don't have airbags, they don't have safety equipment, and they don't even pass crash tests. Now they're finding out the death rate from passenger cars in Brazil is 4 times that of what it is in the United States.
Do you think they really needed to do a study to figure that out? That's pretty simple stuff, John.
You want the
I don't
cheap
give you anything in the car. No airbags, no rollover protection.
Yeah. And now they're blaming the automakers. They're saying, you know, you're making these cheap cars and selling them over here. Well, that's what you wanted. You know, here's a point. You remember when we had this fuel crisis and all the newspapers would write in there, U.S. automakers are sending us cars of gas guzzlers. They're forcing SUVs on us. Folks, nobody ever forced an SUV on you. You bought it because you wanted it. They're in the business to sell things that people want. And when they want them, they buy them. That's why they're
free market society.
You're right.
Awesome.
So if these people in Brazil wanted these cheap, stripped down, nothing little cars because they're cheap, that's the price of being a cheap car. Now, the government over there says that we're going to do, that's it. Starting next year, all cars sold in Brazil have to have airbags, analog brakes, things that we already...
Starting next year.
Yeah.
They give them 1 year to get all this stuff on there. Lots of luck, guys.
So, listen, I have no problem. I'm still driving my wife's 1980 Pinto station wagon. No airbag. I don't know what the crash standard was, but it wasn't good.
There was no crash.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say.
So anyway, that you know, just the people know. You know, we want to bring this to you because it's from around the world. It's not necessarily Grosse Pointe, but it makes you happy that you live here, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, well,
Get
great.
that right,
Well, now it's time for one of our favorite segments on the show. It's called Car Trivia Time. This is our weekly trivia where we ask you a question. We want you to put your thinking caps on, so do not check Google. Don't ask Siri anything. You just turn your phone off, looky over here. We're going to ask you this question. I want you to think about it, and then after the break, we'll come back and give you the answer. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
Okay, here is this week's trivia question. Now, because we're doing a show about tires, this one fits right in. You guys should know this. Here we go. What family member of a noted American tire maker married a family member of a noted American automaker? And when was it? You got that one? What famous tire maker had a child that married a famous automaker's child, and they got married, and what year was it? You should know this if you're a Grosse Pointer. We're going to reveal the answer to the trivia question. Plus, we're going to put Joe in the driver's seat about our topic of the day and how to read what your tires are saying right after this. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cars in Context. I'm your host, John Clor. Today, we're talking about how you can tell what your tires are telling you just by looking at them and being careful with them. We've got Joe Babiasz. Joe.
Hi, John.
Thank you for coming back. Joe's our favorite auto expert on this stuff. Joe, you can see his stuff on the the Automotive Traveler, don't you? Yeah, and you still write for them, right?
Yep.
Very cool stuff. Joe, you being in the business, tires and maintenance of cars are your specialty, but before we do that, we have to give people the answer, especially when it comes to tires, to our weekly trivia. We just ask you a really tough question, but I think it's for a Grosse Pointer. They should know this stuff.
They should all know it.
Oh, here we go. Here was the question, and we're going to give the answer. What family member of a noted American tire maker married a family member of a noted American automaker, and what year was it? Ready? The answer is Harvey Firestone's granddaughter, who was Martha Park Firestone, as in the Firestone Tire Company, married Henry Ford's grandson, William Clay Ford Sr., who has just recently passed away, was the owner of the Detroit Lions, in 1948. We have a wedding photo. Look at those two at their wedding in 1948. William Clay Ford Sr. and Martha Park Firestone. Guess what, folks? Their son from that marriage is Bill Ford Jr. And of course, today we know that Bill Ford Jr. is the chairman of the board of the Ford Motor Company, executive chairman of Ford. So that's a little bit of Grosse Pointe history you guys should have known. And of course, Joe, we were talking about it earlier, Firestones and Ford and Thomas Edison. I mean, Firestone and Ford went way back, and even it was a shame they had that issue with Explorer tires because it kind of severed that relationship in the company, but for 100 years they were a big part of that.
Together.
They really were. But speaking of that, tires are what we want to talk about today. You know, Joe, it's probably the #1 most unmaintained part of your car. People just get in their cars, they drive them. They may think of an oil change. They don't pop the extra few bucks to get their tires rotated or their filters changed. They just quickie in, quickie out, get the oil change. Then after a while, they notice things. Cars driving differently, rolling differently. Even
fuel mileage is down.
Right.
Sure.
And some of it, there was some study that said over 75% of all the cars on the road have at least one underinflated tire.
You know, I wouldn't doubt that. When I go through a parking lot, if I'm at the mall, I just happen to look, and I will inevitably see 3, 4, or 5 cars where there's one tire might have at best 15 pounds, and apparently they have no idea they're driving on that kind of tire.
You know,
they just don't check them.
When I thought
As long
back
as the car rolls,
I know they don't look at it. So a lot of people we've had a couple of shows here, folks, on Cars in Context to help you understand tires. We had Let's Talk Tires 1, Let's Talk Tires 2, and we showed you a lot of information about the tire, but people still are saying, John, it's too complex. We want something easier. And nothing could be easier than just looking at it and what does it mean, or touching the tire and what does it mean, because those two things, your two senses, vision and touch, are going to tell you a whole lot about your car, and you can verify if you need a repair or what's wrong with your car just by watching this show.
True.
So, Joe, let's start off by saying, okay, we know tires are not properly maintained, but they're better than ever before. They last us longer than they ever have, except for maybe some of the imported tires from China, which I know people are having blowouts, and the quality may be suspect there. But other than that, if you have a quality brand tire made by a reputable company, you should get good service out of it if you take care of it.
Yes, you should
Right,
get
so
at
what's
least
the number
40,000
one thing?
miles.
What's the number one thing people fail to do with their tire, other than they never bother to
Well,
check?
it's actually several
Okay.
#1 things, and that's
Okay.
tire rotation and keep your proper air in the tire.
Now, what's the problem with keeping air in your tire? Why don't people do it?
They don't want to get out and find an air hose and fill it up because there's a lot of work, and they figure as long as the car's rolling, I don't have to worry about it. So they don't worry about it.
I blame the gas stations. All you gas stations out there that charge 25 or 50 cents for air, what is
50
wrong with
cents.
you? What is wrong with you charging people for air? You do want people to pull into your station or not? I know, oh, we got to pay for the hose. The air compressor costs money, you know, but guess what? You're driving people into your gas station. If you're known to have free air, I would go to your station.
Yeah. Although there are some major tire sellers that will fill your air for free.
Oh.
You know, you just go in there and they'll check it, they'll fill your tire. People they either don't have the time, they don't make the time for it until it's too late.
Okay, so what do you think then the same issue went? No, everybody, I hope, is getting their oil changed at regular intervals. Why not just say, look, every other oil change, I'm going to rotate the tire? What's the problem there, Joe? Why aren't they doing that?
Maybe they just want to try to save a few dollars, and they don't. The thing is, they don't see a dramatic change. It's a very incremental change in your in the wear pattern of a tire. So they're driving 6,000 to 8,000 miles, and gee, it kind of looks the same as it did last oil change. I'm not going to spend
Right.
$20 for it. Well, the next go around, gee, now it's not really looking so good anymore. Now, what happened to the tread on the inside? It's starting to wear off, or it's cupping, whatever that might be.
Right.
Now they're worried about it, or they might have a suspension problem that's creating a.
All right, so let's take
a
look. Let's give them specifics here. Let's take a look at some of tire problems, and then just by looking at them, let's give them some evidence on, see, what does this mean when I see this on my car? And we're hoping that you do spend the extra $10 or $20, get your tires rotated, because a set of tires, $400, $500, $600, $700, $800, folks.
Sure.
What is $20 when you're talking about $800 set of tires?
You might get an extra 10 or 12,000 miles, 15,000 miles out of those same tires, and basically more than pay for the cost of those frequent tire rotations.
Right. That should be a big lesson. All right, so let's take a look at like one of our first tire problems, and then walk us through, Joe, what are we looking at, and what kind of problems can we see? So on this one, we can tell now, this looks like everything looks great on this tire on one side, on the right side of your screen, but as we get towards the center and then to the left side of the screen, Joe, the tread has disappeared off one side of the tire.
Right.
Now, if you just walk by your tire and you don't bother to look at the inside, you might think you've got tread left. Joe, this is a serious problem.
That's a very serious problem. That, that could be something in the suspension somewhere where there might be a safety issue. It might be more than just an alignment. It could be a suspension problem, a ball joint, or a tie rod end that you might potentially have a safety issue with. So if you see something like that, you really want to get that checked immediately, and then find out what's causing that. And especially if you're going to buy a new set of tires, get the problem fixed if there is a problem, be it alignment or a suspension part.
Sure.
Get those changed, or else guess what? 2 years from now, you're going to have the
Your
same
new
problem
tires are
again.
the
And then
same.
you go, oh my gosh, I have to spend another $600
So if you
on
have a
tires.
problem like that on your tire,
This isn't rocket science. This is pretty easy stuff.
well, Joe,
If I always do what I've always done, I'll always do whatever that is. So
you do the same thing over and over and expect a different
Exactly.
result. That's
Exactly.
insanity. No, you're right. If you have this problem, fix the problem
the
first,
problem.
then buy the tires.
First
but,
find out what the-
But,
go
but
to-
generally, yeah, alignment won't knock something out that crazy unless you really hit something hard. But a suspension problem, tie rod end, ball joints, those things are really, and that tire is pretty much useless, really.
yeah. It's you're not going to get a lot more more wear
Well,
out of that.
all right, let's take a look at some other kind of problem that we can have in our tires, and then you tell us what we're looking at this time.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is another example where somebody waited too long, and we're not sure where the problem is. It's an evenly worn tire. There's no cupping in it,
Right.
But it's showing that the tire is either, as it's going down the road, it's chafing probably on the inside a little bit,
Yep.
and it's wearing out the inside. So what'll happen is you get some bad weather if that's in a front tire. You get some ice and snow, the car's not stopping.
Right.
And I look at that as accident avoidance. Spend the money for your tire rotations to save your tires, to prevent the accident, and to make sure that you're going to stay
Yeah, I
safe.
really think that now there's something like that, folks. Now here's another little hint for you. When you go to look at a tire like that and you're looking, put your hand across the surface of the tire. You will actually feel from each groove in the tread, if it's feathered or cupping, you'll actually feel that this is not right. When you put your hand on your tire, it should be level all the way across the tire.
Right.
You should feel that. You shouldn't feel any part of that tread pushing on you or cupping down, and that obviously. It's not going to channel water away from that.
Right.
That tire could actually, folks,
It'll
when you're
start
driving down the road,
hydroplaning.
you'll actually can
It'll
feel
hyd-
that.
Yeah, you'll
that
feel
will
that
pull
car floating
yeah.
around. You get a heavy rainstorm, that car's going to float. You're doing 50 or 60, you're probably going to lose control of the car.
And so this could actually, folks, this could be an accident problem. You certainly don't want that to happen. Okay, so now let's go look at when we're talking about tread wear and tread. Let's look at something else. So now the old adage used to be, you take a penny, you stick it into the tread, and if you can see Lincoln's head, you can see his complete head, you're okay. If you start to see a gap between his hairline and the end of the tire, you need to replace him. But now they're telling me the penny trick doesn't work anymore because tires now have a different tread wear pattern. They're deeper. Joe, what's the new measurement now?
Well, I mean, that's a basic way to do it, but there's tread wear indicators on tires. I think we had the frame up a minute ago right there.
Okay.
And those are put in by the tire manufacturers that say when the tread matches or meets those indicators where it's flush, it's time to buy tires. Now, I'd say you don't wait till then. I'd say you get it a little bit before then. But those are some of the indicators. And you're right, John. There's so many different tires out there. There's high-performance tires. There's all-terrain tires. There's mud and snow tires, and they all have different treads on them.
Yeah.
And so you don't just go by the penny. I would say don't trust that anymore.
Maybe the quarter. But here's a image here, Joe, of what you purchase. Now you're hoping that your tire store or your dealer, wherever you bought your tires, gave you the right tires for your car. But this is how you can check. All these numbers, these things, why don't we just go through it real quickly so you know exactly what you bought and then what you need to buy to replace it.
I always tell people, you want to be as smart as the guy on the other side of the counter. You don't want to be sold some tires.
Right.
You want to know which ones you want. And, ask yourself some basic questions. When it's time for a new set of tires, am I going to sell the car in a year or in 6 months? Do I do a lot of driving in inclement weather? Do I do a lot of high-speed driving or tow-heavy things? Am I an aggressive driver? And so you ask those questions, and that'll help determine the type of tire you buy.
Yep.
And on the side of the tire, and any tire store will help you read that.
Yes.
Don't think you're alone in this. Go to the tire store. They're going to show you. You can tell a tire a tread wear rating, how well it works in wet weather, how well it dissipates heat. You can tell the
high speed.
And this here is an indicator. As an example, an H, the letter H in the tire might indicate 115 mile an hour top speed rating. So there's a lot of good information, and you can buy a tire knowing that's the right tire for me.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
And you want to be educated.
Joe, that's killer information.
A lot of that stuff's also on the internet.
Well,
you just Google it, you'll get a lot of good information.
Or you just watch Cars in Context.
That's better. That's better.
That's fantastic stuff. And folks, when you see the wear bars you're showing your tires, that's like 30 seconds. In Detroit, I don't like that. Maybe 4 or 3 30 seconds is when I change, because we get a lot of wet weather. They're no good in the snow when it's that bald. You want some tread. You take care of your tires, and they'll take care of you. Yep. Very good stuff, Joe. Thank you for that very much. That's good stuff. But now it's time for something really fun. We call it Pick of the Week.
There you go.
Yeah. So we're going to show you a really cool picture, and then we want to share it with you and give some information about it. And then if you have something that you really want to share, you send it to me, J. Clor at Cars and Context, and we'll share it with our viewing audience. This Pick of the Week I really love. This was sent to me by a buddy of mine. He found a Ford service mailer from June 29th, 1928. Look at this old postcard that folds out, and it's from the C.R. Gleason and Company from Bottineau, North Dakota. And it says, Dear Model T owner, please bring your car into us. We can change your fenders out for only $3. We can give you a tune-up for $1. And we can install your brake shoes for only $1.25 labor. Keep your car running great. Bring it to the dealer. Unlike the email that we get today from our friendly dealer saying it's time for your oil change, your recommended service interval, that was the cool old postcard, June 29th, 1928.
I wish the emails today would say they'll tune up my car for $1. I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Brake shoes,
brake
labor
shoes, $1.25.
for $1.25.
What a bargain.
That just shows you how far we've come. When you think about it this way, folks, the high water mark for the Model T was like 40 years later, we were selling Thunderbirds. Pretty crazy. Very cool Pick of the Week, but there's something even more fun.
What's that?
This one's called Pride in My Ride. This is where you, the viewer, send us a picture of your car, and you tell us why you have pride in your ride, and we put it on the air. So this week, we've got a picture sent in to us from none other than Kenny Leffel. Kenny Leffel, he lives in Yorktown, Virginia, and he's got a 1945 Ford 9N tractor. Now, here's a picture of Kenny. He bought this old tractor, and he wanted to show you what it looked like when he started to work on it, because he wanted to restore his tractor. So what he did is, here it is, when he got it done, a 1945 Ford 9N tractor. And a lot of people don't realize it, but Ford Motor Company sold a hell of a lot of tractors. In fact, the plant where they do the engine plant, Romeo Engine, used to be a Ford tractor plant. And so the four-door tractor was a real big seller. And I really think it's a great part of our history. Henry Ford himself was a great agriculturist. He made soybean stuff. They still make seats out of soybeans. Really cool. Thanks for sending that in. If you have a photo that you want to see on Pride in My Ride, you send it to me, J. Clor at Cars and Context, and we'll be sure to put it on the air, but there's more.
What's that?
The favorite part of everybody's show is when we ask Lauren Parrott of WMTV to come on up and see if we have viewer mail. Lauren, is it possible that we have viewer mail for this week's Cars and Context?
You always
How does that happen, Lauren? Thank you so much for digging through our mailbag. Great job from Lauren Parrott. Joe, I'm going to let you handle Lauren's first letter that she's dug out of the mailbag. Go ahead.
Okay, this one comes from Natalie P. of Harper Woods, who watches Cars in Context on WOW Cable Channel 10.
Okay, WOW Cable, yep.
All right, so she says, I felt the vibration of my steering wheel and took my SUV to the dealer.
Okay.
They said I needed ball joints. It was expensive, so I decided to hold off. That kind of ties in with the tires
We
earlier,
just
doesn't it?
talked about that, Natalie.
Then I got a flat tire. Perhaps it was the ball joints. I took it to my tire shop where they fixed the tire and said I needed tie rod ends.
Wait a minute.
Tie rods. So
One guy says ball joints.
and one guy says tire rods.
Okay, so now that's a problem. That
So
is
can
real.
you give me advice on how can I tell who to believe and when I need to get my car fixed? Well, you know what? That's a tough one because one place she said she took it there as explaining she had a vibration.
Okay.
And they checked and said, yeah, you need this. The other one, she just wanted my tire fixed, and they happened upon the tie rod ends.
Okay.
Or tie rods. So I think she should take it perhaps to a third place and say, please check my entire front end, and you might wind up needing both. That's a tough one, but you probably do need both.
Yeah, Natalie, I
Or
just...
you need neither,
Or
which happens.
we've always promised you guys we're going to do a car maintenance show and tell people how you can tell that the advice you get is actually really good advice, and it's an ongoing problem, folks. Again, we've said this on the show before. When you find a really good dealer that's giving you a square deal on things and you trust them, or a car repair place, you stick with them. If and just because they're a branded shop or from a reputable manufacturer doesn't mean they have the best mechanics in the world. But it's a really good point, and I really think, Natalie, we hope it's one of those two, and that you get your
Or
car
neither.
Or neither. Or yeah.
We hope it's neither, but if it's one of those two, it's probably
That's a
both
really
of
good
them.
question. I got one too.
What's that, John?
All right, this one comes to us from Fred B. of St. Clair Shores, and Fred watches Cars in Context on Comcast Cable, Channel 915. So, Fred, you're watching Joe and I in HD. Aren't you the lucky guy out there? That's right. No extra charge. Well, actually, there might be. Anyway, this says, Dear John, I've been watching your shows for some time now. Well, thank you. We really appreciate that. And we love your co-hosts, Chris and Joe. Oh, no.
That's me.
That's you. It says, but I was wondering why you don't often schedule executives from the auto industry to appear on your show like some of the other car talk shows on cable.
That's a good question.
Okay, well, listen, I have a great answer for that. And I'll tell you what it is, Fred. Those other talk shows bring the executives in. The executives are there to sell you their goods. They're marketing people or engineers. They're there to hype up their product. That's their job. Cars in Context, my job isn't to do that for you. What I want to do is take that information that you're watching on the other shows and to put it into context from real car people, from experience. Remember, our tagline, knowledge is power. So I got knowledgeable people here to decipher if what those executives are telling you, or those engineers or whatever, designers, are telling you is true, if it's honest, if it's something that you can believe in. And that's what I think spells the difference between Cars in Context and all these other little cable shows. So it was a really good question. Sometimes I've had some guests that may be somewhere in the hobby or in the industry. That'll still happen. But thanks for that. If you have a question for me, Jay Clor, carsincontext.com. We'll put it on the air. Joe, thanks for coming by. We're out of time.
My pleasure.
And we want to mention to you folks, to remember, until next time, that knowledge is power. I'm your host, John Clor. Thanks for watching.